Hello, everyone. My name is, she already mentioned, is Lasse Marz. I'm working as research associate at Bielefeld University and in the project as academic expert. And today I am, uh, it's a pleasure for me to give you some insights on the theoretical ideas we had when suggesting the items for the digital topic on the Kronos panel, and also show you some first insights on what came out of the data collection of the Kronos 3 panel. So that first I will talk a little bit about the digital divide and what it is and how it developed in the last years, and then we will talk about the future challenges. And today I picked digital skills in times of AI and social media and stress. So more or less best of the work that we did in the last 2 years. Before I start talking about the digital divide, I want to make something clear at first. The digital divide is something that can be observed within digitalization, and digitalization describes a process of development of technologies and their spread throughout societies. And this process will always be embedded in existing structures if you think about the economy and all the other circumstances that we live on. But this process is not my focus today. I want to focus on the consequences. And when I talk about consequences, I mean the inequalities. We here at our working group are always focusing on inequalities by groups within the society. Now, let's move on to the digital divide. The very basic question of the digital divide, or the main observation of the digital divide at first, was who has access to internet, who has access to information and communication technology, and who hasn't, and what does it depend on. And if we go back to the late 1960s, this question could be answered very quickly and very easily, because when the first preliminary version of the internet was introduced, the so-called ARPANET, you had to have access to one of the 4 computers you see here on the map, which are located at the US West Coast. And with that, the question could be answered, okay, these are the people who have access to the internet and who have not. But from a sociological point of view, this question might be a little bit boring to be answered. And in the next 30 years, we had some rapid development in connectivity across the whole world. So when the internet was first introduced, it was only a small amount of people who could access it. And after some time, it was technically enabled for many, many more, for the vast majority of the world to access the internet. But still we found that this access to the internet depends on determinants of inequality, by which we mean, for example, gender, age, or migration background, and also socioeconomic resources, mainly occupational status, income, and education. So we could see here the first shift from is the access technologically enabled, is it not, and in the second step, other determinants it depends on. But now we are not in the 1990s anymore, but in the 2020s, and that's why we want to have a look at the development from since then. And here I picked a graph that is also part of the Naked Digital data summary that I produced within the project. And what you can see here is how daily internet use rates in Europe developed between 2002 and 2023. And what we can see here, it is by age groups, not that important for my point here. What we can see here is that it increased over time since then. So we can see an overall trend from many people, nearly all of the people. If you look at the let's start the laser pointer. If you look at the youngest people under 25 years in the 2020s, they over 90% of them use the internet on a daily basis. For sure, in the last slide, I talked about access, and now I'll talk about use. I know it's not the same, but I think we could all agree that daily internet use implies access to the internet. So we know from other data that the potential internet access for the people, the rates are even higher. But the point I want to make here is that the question of the digital divide shifted over time. So first it was a question of access, and with now in 2023, nearly everyone having internet access, or nearly, and many of them using it on a daily basis. It's not so much a question of access anymore, and therefore very early on the scientific focus shifted, and now we talk about multiple levels of digital divide. The first level is the one I just talked about. It describes the individual's option of using information and communication technologies, of accessing the internet. The second one is the individual's digital skill and their usage pattern. So the question, are the people capable of using the digital technology and they have access to, and how often do they actually use it? And then the third level is the offline outcome. So not just the question, do I have access? After the question, do I have access? Can I use it? How often do I use it? Is more or less, what do I get from it? And there can always be, and there we can think of positive and negative effects for people using the internet. Positive examples could be that if you can use your smartphone, some instant messenger, to keep contact with people you do not live nearby. So you gain better relationship quality, for example, maybe if you use the internet. If we think about what we are doing here and right now, any type of flexible working is, or many types of flexible workings are enabled by digital technologies, by the use of digital technologies. Home office, working from wherever your employer allows you to, is also some kind of inclusion factor, some kind of outcome of the third level digital divide. But it doesn't always have to be that fun. On the other hand, we can increasingly see that people are exposed to misinformation online, exposed to harassment, insulting behavior, and that this can lead to uncertainties, to bad self-esteem, and many other stressors or negative consequences you can think about. So that's just a really short overview on the digital divide. And before I start with the challenges, I tried a little experiment which I do a lot, because if you do science about digital topics and artificial intelligence, you will use the technologies yourself to understand them better. And what you will see in my presentation in the next few slides, or coming again and again, is some AI, maybe sloppy, but I just wanted to include it here too. And I think this worked out very well this time. So for example, what I did when I started preparing the presentation last week, I asked ChatGPT to make a picture of what it thinks the digital divide is. And I think these two, and I didn't give too much much detailed information on what should be produced, shows some really important aspects of the digital divide. If you look at the upper left picture, you can see there this implies the idea of some kind of global digital divide, which we can see, and also the contrast of city and rural or countryside areas, which is also still a point if you think about the digital divide. And then on the right side, you can see they are trying to make a comic out of it, and you can see even though both people are in very, very different situations, that doesn't actually or determine whether the one on the one side is happier than the other, because to me, the person who actually has the internet access on the left does more or less seem overwhelmed by all the information he gets, or the constant pressure he gets. So just this as a little closer for the theoretical part that we have. So now for the current and future challenges. And as I already mentioned, I want to start with artificial intelligence and ICT skills. Just a quick reminder, what do I mean when I talk about ICT skills? I mean abilities of people, or the capability of people to use digital devices and use the internet for their own benefit. Within the data that we collected in the project, we distinguish between information literacy, communication skill, content creation skill, data security or privacy skill, and problem-solving skill. I think these terms do more or less stand for themselves, so I do not need to go into detail here. But what needs to be made clear here is what is AI here, and AI in this case is doing the same, utilizing artificial intelligence. And maybe just a quick reminder here, what do I mean when I say AI in this context? I mean new forms of artificial intelligence. I mean large language model generative AI that actually is able to communicate with us and produce own content. For sure, there are more scales than just ICT scales. There's an internet scale that was developed, and there's a lot there. But these dimensions of ICT skills are the one you can find in the Chronos data, and that's why I mentioned them here. Yeah, and now let's look at the data. Maybe we see some interesting things. Also, always thinking about the digital divide that we just learned about. In the Chronos panel, we asked the people to self-assess their skill, and so they were always given a statement, and then they could say whether the statement is true for them or not. And what I brought here is one example for ICT content creation skill, where the statement was, I know how to use word processing software on a digital device. And what we can see here in the graph is that what the people answered by age group. Here we distinguish between people of 35 years and older and a younger age group, and between 3 educational levels. And what we can see is that most of the people are quite confident that they know how to use word processing software on a digital device. I mean, most of us might agree that this is a very low bar at this time, and that's true. But at the same time, you got to start somewhere. Now, what do we see in the data? We see that we see some inequality patterns that we might have expected, but I just want to name them right here, so it becomes very clear. Younger people are more likely to say they know how to use word processing software on digital devices than older people, while older people are still at 70% who say that's very true of them. So one could say this skill is just very widespread. And then for education, we again find some inequality patterns showing that higher education goes along with higher likelihood of being able or self-assessing, that one is able to use word processing software. And now what was important for us, or maybe even more interesting for the future, would be how does it look if people want to create content using AI. And this time the statement was, I know how to instruct artificial intelligence to create or adapt text. And if you look at the second figure that we can see here, it shows that, again, the inequality patterns are more or less the same. So again, young people are more likely to be confident they can use artificial intelligence to create and adapt text, and higher education goes along with higher likelihood of doing the same than medium or low education. But what we can also see is that that the skill is much less widespread across the whole sample than the classic ICT content creation skill. At the end of this part, I will make some reflecting comments on this, but this is just the first finding that we have here. So we have inequality patterns in ICT skills, we have inequality patterns in AI skills, and we have less skill, or AI skill overall is less spread than ICT skill. I brought a second example which illustrates the complexity of measuring ICT skills. In this case, it is information literacy. First, again, the ICT skill. This time, the statement was, I know how to check the truthfulness of information and content found on the internet. And if you look at the figure, you will see not so many differences compared to the slide before. So again, people are quite confident they can do so, and young people are more confident than older people. Higher educated are more likely to be confident about this than lower educated people. But if we compare the ICT skill now to the AI skill, we will find something a little bit different. And normally I would try to have a discussion with you, but maybe we do not have the time. So I will just say what I think we can find here. First of all, the statement was, in this case, I know how to recognize whether text, image, or video was generated or altered by artificial intelligence. And first of all, if you look at the age groups, we can see, again, young people much more confident than older people that they can recognize whether AI was at work when creating or changing the content that you see. But you do not see so much differences, or barely any differences, in education. So highly educated individuals do not really think they are not really more likely than medium educated to say they would recognize whether text, image, or video was generated or altered by artificial intelligence. So what I want to say here is that this result is different to the other three items that we had before. Why could this be? First of all, what we know from self-assessing skills is that there is a positive correlation with actual skill, which makes sense. Why would we even ask the question if it wasn't the case? So people who actually have a good skill are more likely to say they have a good skill in whatever you ask them than people who are not as skilled. But there is something called the Dunning-Kruger effect, which describes the phenomenon that if people have a lot of knowledge about something and know there's much more to know, there's a possibility that they underestimate a little bit their own capabilities because they know there's so much more that they could be capable of, but are not. And on the other hand, if you do not have this context knowledge, if you do not know what is possible, you will probably overestimate your own capabilities. So that's what could be happening here. That's the first point. Then, and I want to make clear, correct me if I'm wrong, the data was collected in the last 2 years. So we are still from now on saying early stage of AI. But actually, in some cases, the answer to recognize whether one is able to recognize whether text, image, or video was generated or altered by artificial intelligence, if you say no, that's actually the correct answer. So we live in a world right now where AI becomes better and better, and it might show some critical thinking ability if we say I cannot do this. So just to keep this in mind, and especially if you work with the data, and also maybe a good point for discussion on how do we even measure AI skills if it changes so rapidly. And yeah, I also wanted to add something to visualize again. Maybe some of you already have heard in the past about the so-called Will Smith eating spaghetti test. The Will Smith eating spaghetti test is some internet phenomenon, I would say, that emerged with AI, and it produced some very interesting pictures for all of us. So what you can see here is 3 screenshots of Will Smith. Maybe you recognized him. And the first one is from 2023, and the last one is from this year. And they are all related to the Will Smith eating spaghetti test. What is the Will Smith eating spaghetti test? The Will Smith eating spaghetti test is some kind of informal benchmark test that wants to observe how the AI, how strong AI is getting, how it develops over time. So every some months, somebody uses the very new model of video generating AI to produce a video saying, giving the prompt, make a video of Will Smith eating spaghetti. And I would say that it took all of us probably some seconds to realize that the left one is made by AI, and it would take us maybe some more seconds or even hours to realize whether these are made by AI too on the right side. And I can tell you all of them are AI creations. So that is just a quick reminder on how complicated it is to even realize AI for us nowadays. And we cannot tell whether it's becoming more complicated, or we can tell, but we cannot say at which point it will actually impossible will it be impossible at some point. I can't tell you that right now. So what do we learn from the skills part? We can say the digital skills divide still persists, which we could see because inequality patterns were there for ICT skills, and they are still there for AI skills. And what we could also see is that the skill transfer to new technologies is limited, which for sure also is related to the fact that AI is spreading, and when the data was collected, we were in another stage than we were now, but this doesn't change the finding on the skill transfer. And the two last points that I just made is measuring AI skills is complicated because the technology is developing so quickly, and also the Dunning-Kruger effect. So now we had this, and now for the last part, social media. I see I'm a bit over time now, but you can stop me anytime. I just wanted to also just show you really quickly some findings on social media, on use patterns and stressors, because they are so highly debated across the whole world right now. I think some countries have also already prohibited social media for minors, and some others are trying to. So, and the questions that we are asking is social media a new source of techno stress, implying that behavioral expectations, that privacy issues, and possibly crime are negatively associated with individuals' loneliness, self-esteem, or mental health. So in this case, I do not want to take the approach and talk too much about inequalities anymore, but just show some data that we already have, and implications that we can find here. So first of all, we asked the people in the Kronos panel how often they use social media for different purposes. In this case, you can see posting content, reacting to content, and scrolling through social media. And what we can see here is that that people are more likely to use social media in a passive way. So only 7% of the people are posting stuff daily. 25% are reacting or reposting content on a daily basis, while half of the people scrolls through social media without searching for anything specific. I think this time of doom scrolling, as the public term has established, we would all be aware of. And this is really interesting for us because if you think about the second as well as the third level of the digital divide, which describes on the one hand the use patterns and on the other hand the outcomes, it might show us that when we started off saying the access and use is unequal, we meant having access is good and using the internet is some kind of privilege. And now we move to the point where this is not necessarily the case anymore, but yeah, using it in a way or reducing the internet use might be something good right now. Just real quick, I wanted to bring a stressor that further deepens the understanding of what I just said, because it might be a little bit of an answer to the question why people are even on social media. We here have a statement that says, to what extent would you say that social media pressures you to regularly post content? And I showed you the results this time on a scale from 0 to 10 by the social media use patterns. So we can see here people who not use social media at all, people who use social media daily and not daily and daily. And what we can see here is that those who are not using social media are the most likely to say that they feel pressured to regularly post content on social media, which is, I would say, really interesting. So there might be people who cope or who decide to not go on social media anymore because the pressures them so much. And that's what you couldn't also see in the lower part of the graph, where we can see that those who feel mentally bad or very bad, a little bit more likely to feel pressured to post content regularly. So we do not know the association, the direction of the causality here, but what we know is higher pressure goes along with worse mental health. So I want to leave you with some main takeaways. First of all, the initial question of the digital divide. This appears more and more, especially in Europe. So because more or less everyone is potentially able to access the internet, but the inequality patterns that we see re-emerge in new technologies. One of the technologies, AI, we do not see that inequality patterns re-emerge, but also that AI skills are far less spread than ICT skills. And for social media, we see the vast majority of the individuals in Europe is on social media. And we can also say that using social media is associated with stress. So, and now it took me 15 minutes more than I thought, but I, yeah, just realized that I wanted to give you all of the input. And if you have any questions, I'm still here for some minutes, but for now, thank you so much for your attention.
So I'm David Consolazio from the University of Milan, where I am assistant professor, and I'm involved directly in the Infra for Next Gen project together with Julia and Ruxandra, among all the other people that are involved. But most of the things that I will show in a while today are part of the work that Ruxandra, Julia, and I developed together in the context of the project. So basically we represent a different cross-national survey infrastructure. I'm from the EVS, European Social Survey, and Julia is from the GGS, Gender and Generation Survey, and Ruxandra is from the European Social Survey, the ESS, which is also the leading institution in the Infra for Next Gen project. And it would be nice to talk about all the infrastructure that we used for the project, but we will focus just on the first three, so the ESS, EVS, GGS, and plus Kronos, which is still part of the ESS, but I will describe these later. So the idea is to give an overview of not all, some of the sources that you can use, not only in the context of this workshop today, so for the purposes of the exercise that we will develop together in the afternoon session, but also in general in your research activities, if you're a researcher, or in general in your activities, if you're not a researcher, but you're interested and you use data, survey data for your working activities. So there is a lot of material, and somehow it's not that structure, or it was not before our intervention with the project, but now, as you can see, it is easier and more suitable to use this combination, this variety of survey infrastructure. So let's start describing a bit, in general, why these surveys matter. Yes, because they allow analysis with cross-national comparability. So in principle, everyone is able to produce a survey nowadays with internet tools and so on, but to be reliable, this survey have to be produced in a very relevant, pertinent way with high methodological standards. And if you want to compare countries, you have to collect data with a sample population, representative sample population. And so, it is important that these standards are pushed, and these data are all made available freely in the forms of open data. So all the data and all the tools that I will show you today are easily accessible with a couple of clicks, and at most some free subscriptions to the website. And they are essential for social science research and policy analysis. The first one is the European Social Survey, which provide high quality open access data measuring public attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors. So we are talking about survey data collected at individual levels. So people are interviewed in European countries. The data are cross-sectional, meaning that the same people are not interviewed again and again, but the sample is different in at every wave. And these are mostly face-to-face interviews. And the project started in 2001, and the first wave was realized a year later in 2002. And we have a new wave every 2 years, and so far we have had 11 waves, and again, all open data. As you can see, as the name suggests, so European Social Survey, the project cover all Europe potentially, but it really depends on fundings for each country. So as you can see, there are countries that participated in all the 11 rounds, which are colored in green in the map, and other countries kind of jump in and out. But in general, we can say that nearly every European country took part in the project at least one time, and most of the countries participated in more than one round. So the coverage is quite high. And about the topic, so there are a lot of information in the ESS study, but the main focus is on social and political attitudes, topics such as trust in institution, democracy, immigration, welfare attitudes, well-being. And basically, the distinctive trait is that each wave consists of a core module, so a set of questions that is repeated in every wave, so that it is possible to track country level changes across here. But there are also a couple of rotating modules, so a set of questions that change in every wave, and this allowed the survey to be flexible because some topics may emerge in specific times, and in this way it is possible to introduce questions that are particularly relevant in that specific moment. For instance, 10 years ago, no one had in mind to ask questions about AI in an ESS survey. Instead, now it is possible to have some rotating module for digital inclusion and so on, and we can introduce all these questions, but this is just an example. And the other distinctive trait is that ESS follow the highest methodological standard possible. So not to say that the other surveys are not high in terms of quality, but one of the explicit aim of the ESS is to really follow the highest standards available in survey methodology literature. In this way, it represents a gold standard for the study of opinions and attitudes in Europe. And then, yeah, I might have some missing slides that we recover in a while, so something happened, sorry, I don't know why some slides have been cut. So yeah, sorry if I do this. And Irena, I guess that we'll have to cut a bit of the registration afterwards. But don't worry, because in a moment I'll be here. So I probably made some mistakes copy pasting the previous slide. I had opening another presentation in which there are also information about the other service I wanted to talk you about. Yeah, here it is, the EVS, because we will talk about the inventory later, but we will talk about the EVS and GGS also. So European Value Studies is the most ancient survey infrastructure in Europe because it started in 1981, and it is conducted every 9 years, so it's less frequent compared to the ESS. And so far we had 5 ways, and a new one is coming, so some countries are fielding right now. So probably there are some interviewers all around Europe interviewing people for the new wave. So for what will be the EVS 6. And again, it is a large cross-sectional survey, and the focus is a bit different compared to the ESS because it is on values and cultural change, but a common trait is that, again, it's all made openly available. again, European value studies, so Europe is covered quite well. You can see some same way we saw before for ESS, a map of the countries participating in ESS, in the EVS, and we reached the peak of 47 countries in 2008. Now there are a bit less, but in general, in every way, we cover a lot of countries, again, depending on fundings and availability to conduct the research in each country. And what does the EVS study? So the main focus is on topics such as religion, family values, work ethics, morality, political culture, social norms. So you can see that the distinctive trait is that the focus is on long-term value change, and this is why also the survey takes place every 9 years, because cultural change is slower in its onset compared to opinions change. So 9 years is probably enough. It is not so necessary to take the same survey every 3 years or 2 years. And the interest is on the cultural and normative dimensions. So I would say that the EVS is fundamental for the study of deep social and cultural change. And then we have the GGS, the Generation and Gender Survey, which is part of the Generations and Gender Program. This is a longitudinal pattern. So the EVS and ESS are cross-sectional. Instead, here, the same respondents are interviewed again and again. And so these allow studying the life course perspective, so within individual change over time. And also the focus is quite different. We can say that the ESS and EVS are more similar between the self, even though they focus on slightly different aspects. Instead, the GGS is completely different because it's focused on demographic behavior and family and life course dynamics. But again, all open data. It's not just about Europe. Europe is quite well covered here, as you can see, but we have some Asian countries and South American countries, and Australia as well. And it started in 2004, and now we have 2 rounds, each consisting of some waves. So it is possible to again monitor this individual change. And the topic, it's different, as I said. So main focus is about fertility intentions and behaviors, partnership formations and dissolution, intergenerational relationship, work, family balance, gender roles. So you can see all these more demographic aspects of the world, basically. So this integrates out the possibility to study the life course perspective. So the dynamic change is not just this, not analyzing the topic just in a static ways, and again, to study micro level demographic processes. So it is perfect for the study of familiar and demographic dynamics. And here to sum up, I prepared this table. Basically, I'm not repeating what I've said just now, but since the slides will be made available afterwards, here you can have this table that can be useful for you if you need to have a summary of the salient traits of each survey. I go back to the original presentation, sorry. And yes, so as already mentioned by Julia, in the context of the Infra for Next Gen project, we started from these surveys and also other that we didn't went into detail, so the EQLS, Eurobarometer, ISSP, and basically there is extensive data, extensive information which is publicly available, but there was no central searchable repository for these items. So basically, if you need to search, so suppose you have a research question, you want to find some indicators, so from some information to display or to cross, to combine, you have to search within each website separately, and sometimes you have to download different PDF with the questionnaires, also for the same survey if there are different waves, and so it is difficult to keep track of which item has been asked where and when, and if these items is repeated or not. And so basically we went through all these items asked cross-sectionally in these surveys, and we identify the one that are most pertinent to the objective of each of the next generation EU pillars. So make it healthy, green, strong, equal, and digital, which is of interest today. And the outcome is this inventory for each pillar. So basically a single Excel spreadsheet that has been nicely put online, in which you can navigate all the item in a single environment without having to jump in and out from different websites and files, PDF files, and so on. As you can see, there's a lot of information covered because if we include the five main survey infrastructure in Europe, we have more than 3,000 items. And if you include also the Eurobarometer, we reach almost 11 items. And in this table, you can see how they are divided across the different next generation EU pillar. And it is not present in this table, but we also introduce Chronos items, which will be explained later what they are. So in this link that I clicked, and are you sure if it works? Yes, it is opening. You can see that, yeah, just closing a bit of Windows, yes. This link is available freely, of course, in the Infra for Next Gen website. You are here, you just have to put some information about your role, which is useful for us. You can choose to display a standard or an advanced version of the tool, but it's more or less the same. Here I'm saying that I'm interested in displaying all the pillar, but I can change all these things later. So don't worry if you change your mind about what to do. And basically, this is the spreadsheet that I was talking about, uploaded online, but it is just, it is simply a data, not a data set, a data matrix with a spreadsheet with some information. So you can see there are a lot of items, so survey questions, and for each survey questions, there is of course information of the survey and the years and the way in which have been repeated, question text, and the response categories. And here you can see everything, but the important thing is that you can pillar. So suppose, as in this case today, we are interested in focusing just on questions related to the Make It Digital pillar, you can filter it, or suppose that I need advanced that I know questions just from the EVS, just to say, or EVS and ESS. I can do it, and the same I can put filters for the years. So suppose I want to conduct a research only including data collected only in recent years. I can select it and so on and so forth. I can also introduce some keywords. So suppose I'm interested in artificial intelligence. I put so many filters that there is nothing anymore, but this is just to give an idea of what is possible to do. And so you can filter everything and find yeah, sometimes the filter breaks and you have to refresh and find what is relevant for you, and you can download not the actual data set behind the variable but the list of variables. And then of course once you have the list of variables of questions, you can go to each website to download them. And yeah, it's pretty easy to use. In the keyword bar, you can also use Boolean operators such as and, or, and so on. So you can combine uh, some terms to have a more refined research. The suggestion is really to go in and play around because it is made with intention to be very intuitive to use, but is a very useful surface software platform, let's say, because it allows exploring data in a single environment, and we're having some very positive feedbacks from researchers because they say that it can save a lot of time and can make the search of information not only like shorter in terms of time, but also more efficient. So you can find items, questions that you didn't know exist. And the other thing that I can show you, yes, it's the not that I have made some mistakes with the with the slides today. So basically, another thing that we can show you again in the Infra for Next Gen website. See, this is the homepage. All the links will be provided, so don't worry if you don't find uh, everything now. This is the link, as you can see, for the searchable inventory. But we also have this e-NextGen educational tool, which again was mentioned previously by Julia. So the initial tool was developed within the EVS, and it was called the EVS tool, and it was possible to navigate some relevant questions in the EVS and already display data in this map format, and to combine data and to select some categories and combination without having to actually download the data. So it is good for teaching purposes, also not in university, but in like upper secondary school or even lower grade secondary school, to show how some key variables are distributed and the potential of data for understanding the world. And the original tool from the EVS was so much appreciated that in the context of the Infra for Next Gen project, we decided to replicate the same tool, but to the whole data, to the whole survey infrastructures that are part of the project. So all the ESS, EVS, EQLS, and ISSP. So as you can see, you can select some variables here, and some are about digital, but I can, yeah, I saw online harassment, for instance, and you have the distribution of this variable across Europe. And if you pass the mouse, you can see the percentage, and you can also stratify analysis by gender, age, educational level, residence, such as the rural-urban dimension, and combination of these socio-demographic variables. So, for instance, young men, young, educated, and so on and so forth. And if the information has been collected in more than one way, you can use this light bar to move across different years. And you can also click here on compare maps to add another map. And for instance, you can have the same indicator for different social demographic variables. So you can see on one side men and the other women. And again, the suggestion or also different years for the same indicators. So here I'm seeing men in 2011 and men in 2016. As before, the suggestion is really to go in and play around, because again, it is made with the purpose to be very easy and immediate to use. And you can also click here on explore, and you can explore again the data in a more, not in a visual, not in a map format, but in a more traditional graph format. And this is about the online tools, but you might be interested in downloading the ESS data as well. So I go back to my presentation. I promise that we will share the appropriate slides with all the relevant links that we need. So for instance, another tool, you can find it on the ESS website. You can click here. And you can, within the same environment, explore ESS data. If you click here, and you can browse by round, so the way in which the data have been collected, or by country, or by theme. So for instance, in this case, you have these topics. For instance, here, digital social contacts was a specific module that was asked just in the ESS 10. And if you click on it, you can see you have a brief descriptions of what's inside, and there is the questionnaire and also some document with the theoretical explanation that guided the development of survey questions, just to show you the documentation while it upload. But in the middle, you can see that these are the waves. So these data are available just for wave 10. And if you click on these arrows, these free tool open apps. You can see this one doesn't know. And you can already display some variables from the ESS without the need to download the data. So if you're not confident in data analysis and you're interested in just in showing some key variables, you can do it. So you can see just, for instance, you can filter by team and yeah, digital contacts, then the variables. So about the digital device, for instance, location able to access the internet at home. You can see how it is distributed across the countries that took part on that ESS wave, and you already have a map. And yeah, this is the document, sorry, that I wanted to show you before. So you have this information about the variables, but the useful thing is that you can cross-tabulate some key variables. So here you're in the viewer mode that it is open by default, but if you click on analysis, you have the possibility to click add question variable, and you can select another variable that can be another social demographic variable, for instance, very typical example. Yeah, sorry, my connection is suffering about digital divide. Yeah. And for instance, the same variable as before divided by gender. And you can see all these bars. Yeah, sometimes the representation is not that intuitive, or you can cross with another indicator like media, social trust, yeah, how people, for instance, use the internet, depending on how they are able uh, to see it. And you see the cross tabulation, and depending on the type of variables that you select, so they can be categorical or numerical variables. You can have an histogram, a scatter plot, or box plot, or whatever. So you cannot choose, but it's automatic depending on the type of variables. But most importantly, so remove one variable, you can also click here and, for instance, see the data table behind the graph. So if you want to import it in your Excel environment or other software, you can already do this and produce your own visualization according to your preference. And the very important thing is that you know that survey data must be weighted to have appropriate estimates, and all the data set, all the information, all the data that you see here in this online tool of the ESS are already weighted. So basically they are ready to use. If you download this data, you don't need to do anything else. And then so this is yeah, you can also download the data, but I'm not going into detail here. So basically I leave it in the slide. There is a link to download the data with a very simple tutorial that I prepare here, with the path that you need to click to go to download it, to prepare your own data set and to, for instance, select the ways of the countries and the variables that you need. You can use this data file builder, which is a component of the ESS website, and you can arrange and download the data set that you need. And then, very importantly, also for today's exercise, and this is the last thing that I will cover in my presentation today, is Chronos, which has been mentioned several times today, and always we said every time we will discuss about it later, and here we are. So it is, let's say, sub-project that is part of the ESS, which is panel, okay, not a cross-sectional survey, but kind of cross-sectional web panel, which is supposed to become also longitudinal panel with respondents recruited from the ESS. So again, we have survey data at the individual level covering European countries, and it is a mixture of cross-sectional and longitudinal data. And these are web interviews, not face-to-face interviews, online and offline. We have offline interviews also in Chronos 3 to cover people that do not use the internet. And it started in 2017 as a pilot study, and then the pilot study was successful. So we repeated the panel 3 times, so Chronos 1, Chronos 2, and now we have Chronos 3, and each study has different waves. That's why it's a panel. And again, open data. So what's the difference? Why we say it's different compared to the ESS? Because the ESS is a repeated cross-sectional study, so the sample changes in every way, but some questions are repeated, so you can keep track of changes across countries in time, but the respondents are not the same, so you cannot track individual level change as you can do, for instance, in the GGS study survey, as I mentioned. Instead, Chronos is a cross-sectional panel, so respondents are recruited from the ESS, so basically when they respond to ESS 10 or 11, for instance, at the end of the survey, they ask if they are willing to take part in this project, and then they can be interviewed in subsequent ways. But the questions are mostly different. So that's why it is a cross-sectional panel. It's a kind of a different thing, a hybrid thing compared to what you find in more traditional survey infrastructure, because you usually have the cross-sectional and the longitudinal. Here, which is a panel. Here we have a cross-sectional panel. So we have the same respondents in every way, but mostly with different questions. The idea is not to keep track of changes at the individual level, but to have a flexible instrument that allows to like propose new questions every time it is possible, it is necessary to have it. So it is very quick and flexible because it is online. We can have a new field every few months instead of years, and actually that's what we did. And in Chronos 3, 11 countries participated. The idea is to expand country coverage in the next waves of Chronos. And yeah, so basically we had this Chronos 1, which was a pilot. Respondents were recruited from the ESS 8, and then Chronos 2 from the ESS 10. And now we have this Chronos 3. So basically, we have 8 waves, but the ones that are of interest for us are the 5 waves relative to the Infra for Next Gen project. So waves 1 to 5. And in each wave, we ask questions which have been developed according to the 5 pillars. Some questions were taken from other surveys, so we can have questions that were already asked in the, I don't know, ISSP, EDS, but not in the ESS, and other, for instance, were explicitly developed, so from scratch to cover new aspects. For instance, questions about AI were mostly absent because it's a new phenomenon, it's a new thing, and so most of these questions were developed from scratch. And this is about the design. So basically, it is a web. It was at the beginning a web panel, but then we, of course, we realized we already knew it, but the idea, we realized that if you carry out just a web panel, it can be biased towards the population that stay online. But we know that if we want to have a representative sample of the population that we investigate, we have to take into account also people that do not use the internet. So according to the variable that we have from the ESS, so how often do you use the internet? If person responded that never or only occasionally basically use the internet, we send them a paper questionnaire because we know that if we send them a link, they probably won't see it and won't respond to the questionnaire. So to integrate the offline population, we also relied on the paper, traditional paper and pencil questionnaire that, of course, it was subsequently digitalized to become part of the digital data set. And you can see about some information about the study, some technical information. You can see the percentage of panelists, for instance, who completed all the 5 waves, which are very heterogeneous across countries, but in general, they are very high. So, for instance, in I have the bar here. In Slovenia, almost 74% of the panelists complete all the 5 surveys, which is a very high number. And here you can see the response rate in general that in each wave that were very high because panel attrition is a very problematic issue in survey research. And of course, you can see that some basically we had some dropouts and so on, but in general the response rates were very high. And so how is the Kronos 3 panel structure? We have 5 waves consisting of 90 questions, 18 per wave, for each of the next generation EU data. And yeah, really talk about these. So the question were developed by the Kronos team together with the academic experts such as Lasse and the JRC experts such as Béatrice that will have the presentation after me. So we interact all together to develop these items which need to be relevant in terms of academic output, so more traditional research, but also for policy use. That's why we had in mind to involve both the academic and the JRC expert from the European Union. And all the other things, I already talk about them. And yeah, this is the content. So to come to the to the topic, you can see a very concise way to show the data. So for instance, we had about the digital, you have information about the distribution of digital connectivity, artificial intelligence, and also experiments, so survey experiment on sharing personal data. So a lot of informations are present. And how to get this data? Again, it's part of the ESS. So the website is the ESS website. And here you click on data. Again, don't worry about the links because everything will be shared during this presentation. Afterward, the slides will be made available, but go to the European Social Survey website, data, and Kronos. Before we were on European Social Survey, which is the main survey. Then we have Kronos, and then you can see that we have also other things, so other sub-projects. And Kronos 1, 2, and 3, as I mentioned. Now we are focusing on Kronos 3. And you can focus on, you can browse by wave, and the waves that are of interest for us is R1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, or by country, but what is mostly more useful for me is to browse by theme. So in this case, we can see all the Make It Digital items with an explanation, and then you can see all the variables that have been asked across all the 5 waves. So all at a glance, and then you can also have a search here. Like, let's see. Yeah, I was typing artificial intelligence, but just to make an example, and you see that one was filtered. We had this question in wave 4. And if you click on the arrow, you have the same tool that I showed previously concerning the ESS. So it is exactly the same, I would say. So the item, the distribution, the map, and the possibility to click on analysis and add another item and see how it is different. I don't know. Education, yeah, ILS, the education. No. Okay, so just to see. And then, yeah, everything basically is the same. You have to go inside and play around a bit and explore. And there are, again, different type of graph according to the to the type of variables. And also I forgot to show you relating to the ESS, but this is the same. You can download everything just by clicking here. It requires a login, but you don't even need to register because, for instance, you can log in with Google. So I can see logging in with my personal Google account. And in a couple of clicks, I'm allowed to download the thing that I select in CSV, SPSS, or Stata format, which of course, if you use other software, you can import and convert. So if you are Python or anything else, you can use it. And so again, it's pretty intuitive, but of course, if for this workshop you need some help, we are also here to help you in exploring the data and downloading them. I guess that yes, I finish. Yeah, I leave in the slide also some yeah, the path or about yeah, to do these things. So you can see, click on variable viewer, click on analysis, and everything that I show. It's in the slide.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for inviting me to present this morning. So, indeed, I'm Béatrice, and I work at the Joint Research Center of the European Commission, and I'm leading this Survey Method and Analysis Center, which is called SMAC. So what I'm going to do today is to take you through a question that sits at the heart of what we do, and namely, how do survey data support EU policy making? So I have about 30 minutes, a bit less, and I will walk through the mission of the GRC. I'm not sure, perhaps some of you are not familiar with the GRC and the mission of SMAC as well. And I will share some concrete example of how we have used survey recently to inform policy, and including an important study on loneliness in Europe. And in relation to this, also some work, which is very much linked to the topic of today, on the relation between social media use and adolescent well-being. So let me start with the Joint Research Center. So some work on the institution I will present this morning. So the Joint Research Center is the European Commission in-house scientific service, right? So our mission is to provide evidence-based knowledge to support EU policies. So the word on the left-hand side of the slide somehow captures what we do. We try to anticipate upcoming challenges. We, of course, connect scientific evidence to the policy process, and hopefully we do have a positive impact. And so, of course, we are not a traditional research institute, if I may say. Why? Because we work directly with policymakers, and our added value lies precisely in that interface between governance and science. So this is about the GRC. The GRC has about 2,700 people that are spread across 6 sites. One of them is where I work at the moment. It's in Italy, in Ispra. It's the biggest site, I must say, of the six. And we do offer expertise and competencies on a wide range of disciplines to support almost all EU policy areas. So for those of you who might be interested, they are regularly positioned for trainees as well as contractual agent position. We will soon, for instance, open a position for a survey methodologist. So let me go on with the survey method, the survey data at the GRC, and more specifically, the Survey Method and Analysis Center. It's a very small group that was recently established. So how do we work? Again, this is what makes us a bit different from a research institute. So normally every broad project, particularly a survey project, is grounded in a policy question, right? And in this center, or SMAC, we offer to policy DGs, but also to our colleague at the GSC, support on survey method and data analysis. So we can help with designing questionnaire, with conducting and relating with a survey contractor. And of course, we also support our colleague with data analysis. And at the end, we try to translate those findings into policy-relevant insights. So I will come back on this in a minute, but let me come back again on why survey somehow can be useful for policy making, right? So first of all, it gives a voice to people. So it's a way to capture opinion, perceptions, and if we repeat the survey over time, we can track those opinions or perceptions, for instance. Importantly, and I will come back on it, it also support policy making directly by identifying, for instance, policy priorities, or by testing acceptance of measure before implementing them, or again by understanding the driver of some specific attitudes. But I will come back on it. It's relatively easy to implement, well, not that easy, but it's relatively easy. But of course, surveys do have their own limitation that needs to be underlined whenever it's used for policy purposes, and limitation that might be due to the sampling frame, that might be due to the way questions have been asked, or that might be, for instance, related to response rate or low response rate. So we have to be aware of this when we use survey for informing policy. So how can survey assist policymaking? I like to come back on three examples. One of them is survey can help setting priorities, right? When the policy is multidimensional, say for instance fairness or green transition, survey can help can help us understanding what citizens care about most, right? What matter to them? What should, for instance, policy energy be directed first? So this is a way survey can assist policy making. Survey can also help testing policy acceptance. So before introducing a new policy, say a carbon policy, or even more recently, policy on restriction on social media access for minors, survey can help to understand the public reaction. It might be a policy might be rational, but might face resistance. So survey could help you anticipate this. So this is another way survey can assist policy making. Understanding attitude also. Why do some groups, for instance, resist vaccination? Why are young people more likely to distrust institutions? So a survey, again, can help us understanding this better, provided that the survey is properly designed. And so if we understand this, then we can target communication or intervention for instance, those young people that distrust institution, just to give you an example. So this is the way a survey can assist policy making. Let me now give you an example of a big project we have been working on for several years. And this is a good way to illustrate how survey can help policy decisions. So this was a project that started a long time ago, back in 2021, basically, even a bit before. And we decided to work on loneliness, and we were requested to work on loneliness. Why? Because at that moment, loneliness was on the rise, particularly after the COVID pandemic. And as a matter of fact, there was a lack of comparable EU-wide data on this topic. So we have designed a project with our counterpart DG Employment and together with the European Parliament around 6 stages. So first of all, we synthesized the evidence to understand what we knew and what we didn't know at that time. Then we designed an EU-wide survey fully dedicated to loneliness, and I will come back on this. Then we mapped intervention to tackle loneliness, and we discussed with stakeholders. So this is where survey can be complemented by more qualitative information, where we complement survey data collections with, for instance, qualitative interviews. So this is what we did, and we tried to disseminate what the work. At that time, when we started to work on loneliness, the research community was spread across different disciplines. And so what we tried to do is to put those scientists together, and together also with colleagues from Brussels and so with policymakers. So we have organized a number of events online and also in Brussels in particular to discuss loneliness prevalence in Europe, the challenges and the consequences of loneliness. The GRC, as I said before, is also a research center. And so we have also published a number of academic papers and books on the topic to advance, the knowledge on this. And at the end, we went back to the European Parliament during an hearing and we discussed loneliness in Europe and the challenges. So this is really a project that gives you a feeling of what we do at the GRC and how survey can be used for policy making. So let me say a few words about this survey. So this is a survey that was conducted end of 2022, was conducted online. It covered about 30,000 respondents. It was really the first survey dedicated to loneliness. So we have included a number of items on loneliness, and also what we have done is to design a number of modules that would allow us and researchers outside that would allow us to look at the factors, the risk factor of loneliness, but also at the consequences of loneliness. So, for instance, we have a specific module dedicated to social media, and I'll come back on it. And we also have detailed information on, for instance, childhood experience, which is not that common. So what did we find? Well, what did we find? The headline figure are striking, I would say. 13% of respondents reported feeling lonely most or all of the time. This is not marginal. So then 36% of respondents report feeling lonely at least some of the time in the past 4 weeks. Who are the most affected? Well, contrary to the common stereotype on loneliness, we feel that we all believe that loneliness is an issue of all people. Actually, what we found is that loneliness is particularly high among young people and among women in particular. We have also found that LGBTIQ respondents are more likely to feel lonely. Again, on this, let me say a few words. It's the surveys collecting information on sexual preferences or sexual orientations are not that many, particularly in Europe. And this type of information, the fact of collecting this information allowed us to highlight some struggle that LGBTIQ are facing in terms of health, mental health, in terms of loneliness, for instance, and this has been used in a number of policy documents. So we have also observed, for instance, that adverse childhood experience correlate very strongly with loneliness. Of course, we have much more, and you can consult our website if you want to know more or to look at this book, which is available online. So what were the policy implications of this project? Really, I truly believe that we contribute to raise awareness about loneliness and social isolation. As a matter of fact, now there are Horizon projects which are following this project that are on loneliness, and I'm sure that this will continue. So this is very good. We pushed very much to include loneliness item in surveys. I think it's the case in the Chronos, but also in surveys, for instance, that target young people. We also highlighted, and this is a bit aside from surveys, but the need to collect proper data to measure the impact of loneliness intervention. Impact evaluations are of relatively low quality when it comes to measuring the effect of loneliness intervention, and I think this is also a call for more research on this. We have also identified a number of knowledge gaps through the survey, and many people, and it's very standard to say that the built environment is very important to foster social cohesion or to prevent loneliness, but we know very little actually on the real impact, and so this is what this work and the data collection has highlighted. And we have also contributed to provide new evidence on driver and consequences of loneliness. So let me now move to another topic, which is very much linked to the topic of today, right? And somehow this work was built on the on this data collection on loneliness. And after having worked with DG Employment on this project and the European Parliament, we started to work with DG Education and Culture on a project linking the use or trying to examine or assess the link between social media use and loneliness among young people. So you all know the context very well, right? So social media has doubled since 2015. We have about 5 billion users around the world, and young people are clearly the most engaged users. Over the same period, we have also observed a decrease in the, an increase of emotional disorders among young people. And so naturally, there is very much debate on the news, but also the political area on the potential causal effects of social media on the mental health of young people. So there is some scientific evidence suggesting that indeed social media foster loneliness and distress. And there are also other papers or scientific evidence that argue that the effects are minimal and very much depend on usage pattern. So this is a bit the context. But as a matter of fact, there was clearly a lack of EU-wide evidence on this. And this is where we come in, if I may say, because we could provide, although not in a clean causal way, we could come up with a study at the EU level on the link between intense use of social media and loneliness and emotional disorders. As I was saying before, this survey contained detailed information on social media use in terms of time, patterns, and motivation. And of course, we also have collected other information that is very important if you want to assess the link between social media and emotional disorder. And in particular, for instance, the use of other digital tools, because there is social media and there are a bunch of other digital tools, whether it's gaming, TV streaming, and so on and so forth. So at the request of our colleague in Brussels, we started to look at the link between spending more than, this is what we call intense use of social media, spending more than 2 hours on social network sites and spending more than 2 hours on instant messaging tool, on feeling of loneliness and on feeling of depression and nervousness. Actually, it's not sadness. So this work, again, is very much policy relevant. The European Commission President announced 2 years ago that we will convene the first ever European-wide inquiry on the impact of social media on the well-being of young people. And there has been also, over the past years, a number of initiatives at the EU level and also at the national level, as you know, I'm sure, on this, including the European Strategy for Better Internet for Kids or the Digital Service Act, and so on and so forth. So the work is clearly relevant. Let me now present a few findings quickly. So in terms of statistics, just for you to know, to have an idea, the survey shows that about 20% of women report to feel lonely all or most of the time. The figures are slightly lower for males, and similarly, women are more likely to suffer from emotional disorder compared to male. In terms of social media use, 1/3 of girls or women spend more than 2 hours per day on social network sites. Again, the figure a bit lower for men. And of course, the younger, this is on the right, side of the slide. And of course, the younger the respondents are, the more they spend time on social media. So those are some summary statistics. And here is a table which might be not very nice to look at, but what does it show? So the first part of the panel A, shows you that intense use of social network sites, so, Instagram, of course, now it's difficult to make a distinction between instant messaging tool and social network site. It was easier at the time. But so the more time you spend, if you are an intensive user of social network site, the chance you feel lonely all of the time or most of the time is increased by 10 percentage points. And what is interesting is that this figure is robust to a number of things, to whether we take, I forgot to say that for this study, we focused on on individual age between 16 and 35. But if you, restrict your sample to a young, a sample of, for instance, respondent age between 16 and 30, you get exactly the same findings. So the findings are robust to the definition of young adults. We also have a number of loneliness and emotional disorder measures in the survey. We do observe the same findings. We also can, if we control, for those who do econometrics in the room, if we control for loneliness and mental health during childhood, we still get this finding. If we also account for the time spent on other digital tools, and namely gaming and TV streaming, we still get this. And so our results are also robust to all of this, and also to the participation, the regular participation in sport and cultural activities. So this is more than bivariate statistics. It really tells you that accounting for all of this, intense use of social network site is associated with more loneliness, with more depression, and with more nervousness. Of course, there are moderating factors. Females, the adverse effect of intense use of social network site tend to be stronger for female, and also is much stronger for individuals who to have small offline social network. So this suggests that social media might be particularly harmful when it substitutes for rather than complement in-person relationship, right? Of course, I have to say we have to be careful. We don't have a clear causal, identification strategy. So we have to be careful when we come with causal interpretation. So this has been very much. We have produced policy brief, policy report, and of course papers. But policy brief really to show this and to discuss this and to feed our counterpart in Brussels. So what we have found is that excessive use of social network sites is associated with higher level of loneliness and emotional distress. The adverse effects are particularly strong for females and for individuals with smaller offline social network. But also what we have been pushing for is that, so this was the first EU-wide survey with detailed information, for instance, on loneliness and intense use of social media use. But this is not enough. We need to come with longitudinal studies. Everybody is talking about, I have to stop, right? Everybody is discussing about the mental health pandemic of young people. If we want to know more on this, we need to collect longitudinal data. And so to go beyond cross-nationally, and we need to collect more data on minors, which is extremely tricky, of course, particularly if the data is longitudinal. So we are pushing very strongly for this. I'm not sure we will win, but what we do now, we want to investigate the effect of social media on adolescents and not on young people, and we aim to validate and design a survey instrument to measure this, to pilot the survey in a number of schools, if possibly, and then to lay the foundation for EU-wide longitudinal study on adolescent well-being. And this is, of course, work in progress. So in conclusion, I will say that I don't have my conclusion slide, but in conclusion, I will say that surveys are clearly a powerful tool for policy, right? Because it gives us the opportunity to hear people, to reveal patterns at scale, to change, to observe change over time. When the survey is well designed, it can really shift a policy agenda. I think the work on loneliness has shown this end-to-end, from the data collection side, moment, to the hearing at the parliament. And so I'm going to stop here, and of course I'm happy to take your question in case you have. Thank you very much.